sogno d'anime che sono sempre nella fantasia.
Yes, Sir Hairless here. This is Forestella's performance of Nella Fantasia. I had no idea what this song was. I've just found out it's a song based on the theme of Gabriel's Oboe, or Gabriel's Oboe by Ennio Morricone. It's a really lovely piece of music. It's on my classical playlist. I listen to it all the time while I'm working. I've said on the channel before many times, I'm sure, that the oboe is one of my favorite instruments. And if I were to choose one group to portray the beauty of the oboe sound in human voice form, it would probably be Forestella. So I am very excited to see what they do here. Gabriel's oboe is an instrumental piece of music. Nella Fantasia was released 12 years later as a version with lyrics, with words, sung in Italian. Here they are on the screen now, so please pause and have a read. Ultimately, it's a very hopeful song. It's overwhelmingly positive, almost dreamlike, which I suppose is to be expected considering the title, which means in my fantasy or in the imagination. This was the winner of our recent monthly members poll. If you want to vote in these, all you need to do is be a Patreon member. It's completely free. You can join at the link below in the description. So without further ado, let's get straight into this one. It said Sarah Brightman there. Has she done a version of this song?
Nella fantasia io vedo un mondo giusto.
Yes.
Lì tutti vivono in pace e in onestà. Io sogno d'anime che sono sempre libere come le nuvole che volano in fondo nella fantasia.
I mean, there are 3 verses to this song, as we saw in the lyrics in the introduction, and they're not short verses. This is 1.5 minutes we've already heard. They gave the whole first verse to Kang Hyung-ho, and I love them for doing that. Unreal. If you haven't seen my previous Forestella reactions, please do watch them, all in the playlist up here. I'm pretty sure in every single video I just become a fanboy of Kang Hyung-ho. I think he is ridiculous. Such a natural sounding countertenor voice. I mean, we can call it male soprano at that point, essentially. Unreal. I'm a bit overexcited, as you can probably tell. And this is funny, actually, because one of our Patreon members sent me a video in which these guys, Forestella, the 4 of them, they sing this, but they have switched roles. So you could have the bass singing the countertenor part. I've not actually seen this video yet, but I'm going to watch it. By the power of editing, future me can include a little clip now. That video sounds like it could be fun, so I think we should watch it after this performance. If you want to see that video and my reaction to it, you can find my full video on Patreon, linked below in the description and in the pinned comment. Also, these live performances are strict with copyright. I may have to cover the video. So if I have done that, that very same video linked on my Patreon will be unfiltered, unblocked. All right, well, now we're here. This will be our first pause. If you don't want to hear my analysis, go to the timestamp. Let's go back to the start. A pensive opening, which I did expect because in the original song we get something like this. Until the theme in the oboe enters. suspension immediately in there, which as part of the chord is the suspension is a suspended note, causes tension, and then we have subsequent resolution. It's a nice feeling. Very calming in this context of this song, which I do think is really nice. Different type of pensive though in this arrangement that Forestella are singing. They are performing in a different key, but we don't know that until they start singing the theme. This introduction, what we've just heard there, is very harmonically ambiguous. There's this drone at the bottom in the bass part, and then the line at the top, which is outlining, which we could think is a B-flat minor chord. Then there's this major resolution.
NELLA FANTASIA.
Ah, and there's the entry. So tension has been building. It's been very pensive. And what better way to be introduced to the theme than with Kang Kyung-ho? It's beautiful.
Io vedo un mondo giusto.
Such a natural ability to sing that high in his countertenor range. Like I said before, male soprano, I will call it. I don't need to keep complimenting him. I think it's very evident how gifted he is as a singer, as a musician. The lyrics of the first line, "In my imagination, I see a fair world," and then "everyone lives in peace and honesty" there. These are very hopeful lyrics, very, very positive. I mentioned in the introduction, almost dreamlike, and his voice is essentially sending me into a dream. How legato and melismatic it is, how smooth it is in contrast to the hard t sounds of tu, ti, staccato, disjointed notes, complete contrast, all in the same phrase. Tempo rubato, a phrase quite fittingly in Italian that literally translates to "in robbed time." He's a tiny bit behind the beats, but in a very exaggerated and purposeful way. He is in control, essentially. The contrast between intense vibrato and then on pa of pace, straight tone, more full sound, and then back into this lovely airy voice. And if anyone has seen my other videos, especially with Dimash, for example, you'd know that I love airy voices, a lot of air in the sound. Ooh. And then when he moves to the highest point, the lyrics are talking about clouds flying. Very, very fitting. Unreal. He's sending me into the clouds to relax and listen to him here. If you're curious about just how high that is here. And one note above it here is as high as your typical chorister is expected to sing. Kang Kyung-ho can go up there with such ease. It's crazy. As for the arrangement underneath, the mixing, I don't know how this would have sounded live, but how I'm listening to it on YouTube now, the voice is clearly the prominent feature, as it should be. The backing instrumentation, it's very orchestral, very string heavy, nice chords, subtle dissonances and resolutions like in the original, like with that suspension I showed you. You can hear that dissonant note coming through. And very long chords, very relaxing, which I think naturally makes us focus on his voice more. Yeah, really impressed with that first verse. Let's carry on for verses 2 and 3.
Nella fantasia io vedo un mondo chiaro, lì anche la notte è meno scura. Io sogno d'anime che sono sempre libere.
Interesting harmonies. This performance is going so quickly. How are we already on the third and final verse? From my experience with these shows, the copyright is very, very strict. So I think it's safest for me to do another pause now. Let's just go over a few things from that second verse. Second verse starts with their baritone, Beidou Hun.
Nella fantasia.
I find him to have a very distinctive timbre in his voice, and I often say it's so impressive and surprising just how high he can sing. He can sing higher than many tenors I know in his chest voice, even though he definitely is a baritone. Based on the sound of his voice, the texture, the timbre of it, we don't see that here. It's at a fairly low down register, very comfortable, very relaxing. He's using a lot of air in his sound as well. Great voice control, vibrato coming through very nicely.
Io vedo un mondo chiaro.
Seems a little bit more regimented rhythmically than Kang Kyung Ho was, which I like to see. It just shows a bit of variety between the two verses when they're both solo verses. And I like the formality of it. They're all standing, hands in front of them, looking at the singer. And Beidou Hun just looks like he's having a lovely time, like he's telling them a story. A bit of tempo rubato there, slowing down a little bit. And I like the growth through that note there. You can see his mouth open as the vowel sound changes, and this growth in sound leads into Chomingyu, the tenor, and Ko Wu Rim, the bass, coming in. So at this point now, we've heard all four of them. I mentioned the harmonies are very interesting, which I'll get into in a second. One reason is here, the bass. If we listen to his part, that first line there, just two notes. And the tenor is singing in parallel motion with the melody. So baritone on the melody, tenor parallel motion, which means as the melody moves up, the tenor will move up by the same amount. As though they had like a metal stick in between the two parts and they're stuck at a distance, moving in exactly the same directions. And the bass joins in there as well. Why parallel movement results in interesting harmonies is because usually when the harmony changes, we can just think of it as chords changing. Now, it's just the way of the world that as you change chords, sometimes, whilst most of the notes will all move down together, one note might need to stay because it fits the other chords better, and then it can rejoin. There's always a bit of flexibility. Moving in parallel motion sort of removes the flexibility. It's not a bad thing, and when it comes to singers, you could argue it unifies them more. They're just moving in perfect harmony, and I use that word almost metaphorically, not in its strict musical sense. To show you a crude example on the keyboard, let's create a bass line. This is what the chords will sound like with the other parts moving with it. You might have noticed that the top note here did not move from chords 2 to 3. If it did move in parallel motion with the other chords, then it would sound like this. And then they'd all move down one note, which is a completely different feeling. From this to this. That's a very crude example I just did on the spot, and obviously the song, the musical context will play a huge part. But with Forestella, a lot of their performances just seem quite magical. I'm sure I've used the word magical in my other reactions, and a lot of that is to do with their arrangements, which are just really quite amazing. We've seen some examples where they completely change the feeling of the original song, such as My Favorite Things. Here, they're not really changing the feel just because of how calm and serene the original song is. So what do they do instead? They use their vocal harmonies and the fundamental harmony to their advantage. And here at the end of the verse is a great example of two things we've spoken about. One is the parallel motion. So let's listen to the bass part, and you'll notice that as the top two parts move down, he does not move down, he stays, but also him staying results in a suspension. So as they move, he suspends through, and then he finally moves down with them. And also, I heard a upper voice there. Was Kang Kyung Ho singing? I think he is as well. So 4-part harmony, Kang Kyung Ho's part there. All right, let's carry on and finish up with the third and final verse. Yeah, that was a really nice one, wasn't it? What better way to start off the third and final verse with a key change, moving up just a little bit. I love as well the range of them all they get to really show off, such as here, again, really luscious harmony at this point. Due to the bass line chromatic rising. And there, the bass part. With the countertenor at the top. And of course the inner parts, so just making use of their ranges really. Now my next point, I know I'm going to receive comments of people saying, no Sir Hairless, you're wrong here. I'm telling you there are backing voices in the track. Every time I mention this with live performances, there are always comments of people saying, no, it's impossible to have backing voices. It's fine to have backing voices in the track. It just enhances the already enriched sound. I don't see an issue with it. I do believe that the prominent backing voices, which sound like a choir, are being doubled by the various members at various points, but they are definitely there. And I think it just really enhances the angelic element. I'm thinking like a chorus of angels, that type of thing. Interestingly, and as I'm listening to all four of the voices here, the part that I can personally hear the least, or in terms of volume, I guess, is the tenor part, Cho Mingyu. He is a leggero tenor, this really light voice, no doubt singing very powerfully because he's singing fairly high here, but just compared to the other parts that we're hearing, I don't know if it's the mixing, the audio engineering, or them actually singing at different volumes. I would assume the former, but it's these little touches that really add to the overall performance as a whole. The attention to detail. One voice at one moment will be significantly louder than at another moment based on what each voice is doing. And the instrumental end, just a testament to the song as a whole. Elongated, orchestral notes, subtle dissonances. Yeah, really nice one, that one. I have received many comments to do this one. It seems to be a fan favorite, and I can see why. It's not too crazy, it won't scare anyone away. It's a great showcase of all of them, but of course particularly Kang Hyung-ho with that unreal voice of his. Well, now it's time to watch them sing this, having changed parts with each other. I think that could be very funny. So if you do want to see that with me, make sure to head over to the link below over on Patreon. And if not, thank you very much for watching. Would really appreciate a like and a share. Subscribe if you haven't. If you'd like to support me, you can donate me a hot chocolate or two at the Buy Me a Coffee linked below. Or if you'd like to join the community, get access to additional exclusive content over on Patreon. The link is on the screen now, and I will see you next time.